I'm Peter Margulies, and I'm delighted to say I'll be taking over our immigration clinic this next year. I've had 8 years of experience doing immigration clinic in South Florida, in Miami, so I expect that that experience will stand me in good stead doing the clinic here as well. What we do in the clinic is very similar to what you've heard described really from all the programs today, and that is you get an opportunity to change lives. So if you, for example, represent someone who's seeking refugee status, who's applying for asylum, because they have a well-founded fear of persecution and they will be subject to arrest, torture, or death in their country of origin, and you give that person an opportunity to stay here, that changes that person's life. Those hearings are held in Boston. That's where we do a fair amount of our work. The Immigration Court up in Boston, which is part of what's called the Executive Office for Immigration Review in the United States Department of Justice. Those are adversarial hearings. You have attorneys from the Department of Homeland Security, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, what is commonly called ICE, who are on the other side. And you can expect that they will be as robustly adversarial as you can imagine, because that's what their job is. And having taught a number of folks who have served as ICE attorneys over the years, I know that in fact is how they take their job very, very seriously. So representing folks in that situation, you get a chance to get people asylum. For example, one of the things my students did in Miami was to get asylum for a young Somali refugee who'd seen her father killed right in front of her by the forces of an opposing warlord. Not all our cases are that dramatic, but a fair number of them are. We also do work involving what are called special immigrant juvenile cases, or SIJ cases. Those are cases that kind of straddle the boundary. You do work in immigration court and get a visa for someone who came here as a kid and was abandoned by at least one parent. So there too you get a chance to change lives. If that person has to go back to his or her country of origin, that person is going to face a life pretty much devoid of prospects, without someone to take care of that individual, minimal job hopes or anything. And you get a chance to have that person start afresh in the United States of America. That work is also done in local probate courts here in Rhode Island and in Providence Family Court. One thing we found is the judges are very user-friendly. They care about these cases because there are kids involved after all. They want to do a good job, and so they make space on their docket to make that happen. We also do some work involving what are called U visas. Those are visas for victims of crime, often trafficking or smuggling, other related offenses. That's work that also involves making sure prosecutors are on board, because those prosecutors have to sign off on the application. The application is contingent on your client providing adequate cooperation in a criminal case. So you get involvement with the criminal justice system as well. So there are a lot of opportunities to do good work in front of courts. I never tire of appearing before courts. I was in federal court in Providence this morning before Judge Lisi, and I thought I knew Judge Lisi, and it turned out that she surprised me with her ruling. And so that's really a pleasure and also a challenge of appearing before real courts. You can never fully anticipate what's going to happen, although getting to know your judge is a watchword for any practicing litigator. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew Rogers to talk a little bit about his experience in the clinic.
So I'm Andrew Rogers. I'm a 3L. I was afforded a great opportunity to do an additional 2 credits in the immigration clinic this spring. So I did my 8 in the fall, and now I'm just carrying over with one of my cases in the spring. We carry all the cases that Professor Margulies was talking about. I think I wanted to kind of focus a little bit on what I saw as the benefits of being able to work with your clients and being able to manage your own cases. It's an incredibly empowering feeling. So I don't really have many family members that are attorneys. So to me, this is a whole new world, and then to be able to do intake interviews with clients and to manage their cases and to appear before judges as a student attorney with some oversight from a professor, I found to be incredibly empowering and made it all that more exciting to want to be an attorney. So less of the actual learning about how to do the law. For me, it was an incredible experience because, like I said, it was empowering. You know, and it made me realize, like, I can actually do this, and it's a lot of hard work, but it's something that I can do. In addition to that, I found that the interviewing of the clients was probably one of the most rewarding experiences I've had. So Professor Margulies mentioned SIJ cases, so SIJ cases, I refer to them as, and they're for minors. So typically it'll be a 15, 16, 17-year-old kid is in a couple of the cases that we have from either Honduras or Guatemala, and they make the trip over to the US, and they end up with a cousin or something like that. So you'll have to interview them, do an intake interview. And now you're doing an intake interview with a 15-year-old kid who doesn't speak any English, who's probably not used to being in any of these administrative buildings and these office buildings that have fluorescent lights and things like that. He's incredibly intimidated. And you have to find a way to kind of bridge that gap. And for me, I don't speak Spanish. I can speak a little bit, you know, but you're working through an interpreter. So to be able to bridge that gap in order to really communicate with this kid and then be able to present his case in front of family court, like Professor Margulies was saying, and then to put an application into the federal government, I think is a really, really challenging and rewarding experience, and it's something that, you know, I can't imagine I would have ever had without the immigration clinic. In addition, one of the things that Peter mentioned about changing lives. So with the immigration clinic is a little bit different than the criminal law clinic in that immigration cases take, you know, years. So I asked for a continuance on one of my hearings, and I got a court date a year and a half later. You know, and it's like I got my chops busted by the criminal law clinic. Like, oh, when's your next hearing? 2015? And I was like, actually, yeah, you know, it's May 2015. So because of that, you might find yourself inheriting cases from former students that they're just waiting on an adjudication of a petition. So, for instance, one of my clients had already had his asylum application approved. He was just waiting on an interview for adjustment of status so he can get his green card. So we go up to Johnston, and I went with him to that interview. I literally had not prepared anything for this kid. Obviously, I familiarized myself with the law and the facts, and I helped, you know, prep him for this interview. But I felt like I barely did anything for this kid. And we show up, and his green card is approved, and he starts crying, and he's so happy. And here's a kid who was being tortured in his home country. Now he doesn't have to go back. He has permission to work. He has permission to be here for the rest of his life. And that's something that, you know, I was able to be a part of. And I think just for that reason, the immigration clinic, criminal defense clinic are amazing. So I really enjoyed my experience.